Ah, Sonic, everyone's favorite blue hedgehog. Sorry, Mabel. In recent years, the release of a new Sonic game has been a tumultuous time for fans of Sega's mascot as they hold their breath and hope that maybe this will be the one, the game that ushers the return of the king to his former glory. And then we get Sonic Forces with my homemade character I've seen some shit, the Hedgehog. But that was last time. Now we have Sonic Frontiers, a game that Sega boasts will guide the franchise's direction for the next decade. But before we dive in and try to figure out what direction that is, a very quick retrospective on how we got here. You see, it all started with Mario. Nintendo had a mascot, and Sega wanted one too. And so they brainstormed a bunch of ideas, including this chicken with attitude, some kind of American dog, and this Bart Simpson ripoff before landing on Mr. Needlemouse. Ah, they really missed a trick not using this design here. What's that? There's a ROM hack that replaces Sonic with this design? Of course there is. Anyway, Sonic and Mario fought a brutal battle in the early 90s to decide who had the best game where the character runs from left to right. And I think everyone agrees that both camps had some incredible games in that time. In the second half of the 90s, Mario transitioned from 2D to 3D, and after a few false starts, Sonic followed. Now, instead of running right, he ran forward, and everyone liked that. But soon after, Mario and Sonic's paths began to diverge. Nintendo and their mascot would go on to set the benchmark for 3D platforming. Sonic, on the other hand, had a much rockier trajectory. And so the year is 2022 and we come to the next great transition, the open world game. Of course, open world games have been around for decades, but established game franchises transitioning to open world is a relatively recent trend. Sonic's old rival has already dipped his toe in the genre with Bowser's Fury, and that was a great little game. Plus, Nintendo's other guy kind of set the bar for how you transition an established franchise to open world, so no pressure, Sega. Now, I'm going to keep this video very light on spoilers. All the gameplay you see will be from the first third of the game, and I won't cover the story beyond the initial setup. Okay, we start with the prologue. Eggman is concocting some kind of nefarious invention, but it ends up backfiring and sucking him into the metaverse. We then cut to Sonic disregarding every airline passenger safety protocol. How is this even possible? Did he superglue his feet to the plane? So I like to play this game called How Long Can Tails Fly a Plane Before He Crashes It? That was about 3 seconds, which is actually a new record. And before we know it, Sonic is running through this Green Hill-esque stage. This is good, but it doesn't seem very open world. Okay, so you clear the stage and suddenly Sonic finds himself alone on this strange island.
Looks like I'm the only one who made it out of that, whatever it was.
Hold on, why is Sonic's voice so much deeper? What happened to, you know...
Oh yeah! This is happening!
Oh, it turns out they've replaced the voice actor a little while ago. I guess they were trying to go for a more mature, deeper voice now that Sonic is in his 30s.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
Alright, so this is the actual open world section, and straight away I've got to say this is the best Sonic has controlled since I can remember. You get that sense of speed, but he's still really responsive for the most part. Graphics-wise, it's a mixed bag. The good news is Sonic looks great speeding around at 60 frames per second if your system can handle that. The bad news is the popping. Just look at this sweeping shot, and this is on PS5. As for the Switch, it's kind of what you'd expect. The draw distance is about 2 meters ahead, and if you take on any of the bigger enemies, the game turns into a PowerPoint. As for the graphics, the cartoony style is a bit more forgiving of Nintendo's console, but even that has its limits. You see, I'm not sure, is that tree there an homage to the Mega Drive games, or is it just the Switch? Okay, so Amy is trapped in this big hamster ball, and we need to collect these memory tokens to get her out. Oh, I get it, the tokens have been scattered around the map to get you used to the gameplay. What a nice tutorial mechanic. The various platforming and obstacle courses scattered around the island are fun to navigate around. You definitely get that classic Sonic feeling when you hit the spring just right or shoot through a dash ring. I also think the tutorials baked into the loading screens are a nice touch, although sometimes you can get carried away. What'd you call me, you overgrown bum bob? I'll have you! Right, so we collect enough tokens to get Amy out. She's a Force Ghost or something, whatever. What's next? Collect more tokens. Okay, sure, it gives me an opportunity to explore the open world a bit more beyond the springs and the grind rails. All the different towns, villages, markets, and there's nothing there. It's an empty island filled with floating Sonic obstacle courses and a bunch of enemies. Look, I understand they've probably been burnt by Sonic 06, so we don't need these weird realistic looking people with their dogs, but there's got to be something else here. Well, you get these little things that follow you around. The combat is pretty basic, but there's enough variety of enemies here to make it interesting. You've got the possessed children's balloons, this flying skid mark, and the giant feral Beyblade, just to name a few. But once you unlock the Sonic Boom ability, you can take out most of the enemies without even getting close. You do get these mini-bosses wandering around the map, which look cool, but can be a bit annoying. For example, you're just running around, looking for these tokens, minding your own business, and then suddenly, bam!
What you looking at, huh? You want some?
Okay, I've got more tokens for you, Amy. Can we do something else now? Yes, now we get a mini game where you've got to herd these little bastards around and watch out because some of them leave an exploding turd. Okay, what's next? Collect more tokens. Of course. Look, you can even tell Sonic is fed up of collecting these bloody tokens. Right, so you collect some more and then you get another mini game.
Maybe if you use that new technique of yours, you can clean up all this wild brush.
You f***ing what? So yes, here he is, Sonic the Gardener. I mean, you might as well add it to the list right next to Sonic the Football Player, Kart Racer Sonic, Tennis Player Sonic, and Shoe Endorsement Personality Sonic. With his Sunday chores done, Sonic now has to collect the vault keys from these big portals scattered around the island. And this is where you realize the game borrows quite a bit from its old nemesis Mario. The portals lead to traditional linear Sonic levels and you collect keys by completing them, just like you would collect stars from stages in Mario. Collect enough keys and you get a Chaos Emerald. Okay, good, this is finally starting to pick up some pace. Let's get another emerald. Nope, you've got to get more Amy tokens. Look, poor Sonic's developing a nervous tick. You know what always helps me to de-stress? Fishing.
I'll let you borrow a rod.
Okay, but I wish you wouldn't say it that way. Alright, let's see what we've got. Sonic, you need a hand with that? This pond is filled with all sorts of crap. Crates, contracts, robotic magic carp. So for every catch, you get these fishing tokens which you can exchange for things like keys and memory tokens. So I guess you can just use the fishing minigame to farm all the different collectibles you need instead of running around the island. So finally, after you feed Amy enough tokens and collect enough emeralds, you get to access the boss area and meet this lovely fella. Sonic then climbs up the Titan's armpit, collects the final emerald, and turns Super Saiyan. An edgy background vocal track plays as Sonic and the Titan engage in a slap contest. Sonic gets a few good ones in before the big man sends him flying. And this is where the camera really gets nostalgic. This boss battle is straight out of Dragon Ball Z. There are beam struggles, 20 punches per second, and it ends with Sonic punching through the Titan. Alright, where to now? Wait, what's this? Different zones? Yep, this is one of those types of open world games. It's actually broken up into several unconnected sections, each one with a different ecosystem. And that's kind of Sonic Frontiers in a nutshell, because each of these zones follows the same formula. You have to collect enough cogs to open up enough portals, to collect enough keys, to collect enough emeralds, and all of this is constantly padded out with having to find tokens for a friend character trapped in that specific zone, who make you do mini-games and puzzles. You then take on the big boss before moving on to the next zone. There are some slight deviations later on in the game, but for the most part it sticks to this template. And look, none of these elements are specifically bad. As I said, Sonic controls well, and running around looking for the tokens can be fun. The classic stages are well designed, they have a good soundtrack, and they're also pretty fun to play. It's just that this game's big gimmick seems to be the open world, which isn't very open. Yes, you can collect the tokens, cogs, and keys in any order you want, but you're still heading towards a set linear path. In fact, this game is as linear as any of the 3D Mario games. It just has a bigger hub world, which is the other problem. Once you get past the wacky floating obstacles, the zones feel kind of empty. It's actually very similar to another famous franchise which went open world earlier this year, Pokemon Legends Arceus, where the open world consists of several sandbox areas which are rather empty apart from that one mechanic the game is known for. In Arceus' case, it's catching Pokemon, and in Frontier's case, it's running through obstacles. To be fair, not every open world game has to be Breath of the Wild or Ghost of Tsushima or Red Dead Redemption, but I think these games have conditioned players to expect an open world game to be comprised of these sprawling sandboxes filled with a metric ton of different tasks, missions, and gameplay elements. So when we get something like Frontiers, you suddenly start thinking, why isn't Sonic picking his favorite gun from a catalog or respraying his car chrome? And yes, those of you who have completed the game could argue that the reason the world is so barren is due to story reasons. But come on, it's clear they built the story around the gameplay. And as I said, I'm not going to go into the story, but rest assured, Sonic lore enthusiasts, this has your typical blend of over-the-top anime-style storytelling with a hint of that trademark Sonic edge thrown in. And each of the characters gets several moments to shine. Overall, I think yes, this is the best 3D Sonic game in 2 decades. So, hardcore Sonic fans finally have something to enjoy after years of this. As an open world game, it does feel strangely linear and somewhat empty, but at least it's a good start, and I've seen this exact sentiment thrown around a lot by other reviewers. It feels like the Sonic franchise is this misbehaving pet, and we're all so glad that it finally did a trick that we're going to reward it and hope that it does more in the future instead of just going back to chewing on our favorite pair of shoes. I'm really interested to know what you guys think of Sonic Frontiers, so please leave a comment with your thoughts below. Where does it rank amongst all other Sonic games for you? What do you think of the open world elements? And is this a direction you'd like to see the series continue in? As always, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow me on Twitter. See you next time.